In this New World Aeternum Rapier build and weapon guide, we'll be talking about the Rapier. It scales with both dexterity and intelligence, though dexterity has a bigger impact. You can build around either stat, but the Rapier has a high skill floor, so if you master it, you can really excel, especially in PvP. The Rapier performs a 4-hit combo that consists of a thrust followed by 2 slashes and another thrust. All these attacks deal thrust damage, even though the middle ones might look like slashes. Nearly every attack from this weapon class deals thrust damage, but Flourish and Finish and Tondo deal slash damage. Mastering this combo is a key part of playing a Rapier build because the 2 middle hits have very short range, almost like the hatchet, so you need to be right up close to land all the hits. Hitting these attacks is important as some passive boost their damage, while others reduce cooldowns when you land them. Positioning and timing your combo between abilities is crucial for success with the Rapier. Ideally, you want to use an ability, pull off the combo, then repeat that pattern. You can break out of the combo in a pinch if things go wrong with other abilities, and you should. A big part of Rapier gameplay is reactive. Learning when to stay in the fight and when to reposition while keeping up your combos is key to mastering this weapon. The pros of the Rapier are high single target damage, high mobility and evasion, good debuffs, and excellent for 1v1 PvP. The cons are that it has very limited AoE skills, it's kind of glass cannony, has small hitboxes, and requires high skill to use properly. Moving on to skill trees, looking at the blood skill tree, it's all about bleeds, applying bleed damage, consuming bleeds for instant damage, and extending bleeds. This build works well if you like damage over time, especially against tough enemies like bosses, elites, or even other players. The first ability here is Flurry. It's a rapid 5-hit ability that deals more damage than normal attacks. It hits quickly, but is a longer channel ability. You can cancel it anytime by dodging or using another ability, so chaining combos with it gets easy. It also grants you Grit while executing the ability, making you unstaggerable. Progressing this skill line allows you to reduce its cooldown when you successfully land hits, inflict bleed on enemies, and extend debuff's duration. Next is Flourish and Finish, an interesting ability that starts with a quick horizontal slash called Flourish with a larger hitbox that deals slash damage and knocks enemies back. Then you can quickly follow up with a lunging attack called Finish, which consumes any active bleeds to deal significant thrust damage. The more bleeds you have on the target, the more damage it does, making it a powerful ability when timed right. The Capstone increases the damage from the consumed bleeds, further boosting its power. Use this after you've stacked 1 or 2 bleeds. Progressing this skill line grants you Grit, which makes you unstaggerable, replenishes your stamina by 20 if you land a successful hit, and reduces the skill's cooldown by 3.5% for each tick of Tondo's bleed damage. This means ideally you'd use this skill before using Tondo. Tondo is an ability where you make a slash dealing slash damage that reaches 5 meters and applies a bleed debuff to anything in front of you. It deals both the initial damage and damage over time and has pretty generous hitboxes, making it easy to land. Unlike most Rapier abilities that are more thrust-focused with narrow hitboxes, Tondo is more straightforward and reliable. It's great to open with, setting up the bleed early on. Its bleed debuff is also unique in that it deals 10% of your weapon damage for 10 seconds. It can also stack thrice, which resets the 10-second duration of the debuff. Progressing this skill line allows you to reduce its cooldown and increase its attack potency. The capstone for this skill tree, Bloody End, boosts the attack potency of Finish by consuming the stacks of bleed inflicted on enemies. It doesn't seem to affect other skills, making Momentum a much better option in my opinion. Moving on to the Grace skill tree, this one is all about skilled gameplay. It features a counterattack, a dodge, and a mobility ability that deals good damage, works for closing gaps, and can help escape from enemies. First is Fletch, a fantastic mobility ability that shines in PvP. It works as a great gap closer to catch up to enemies or escape if you're being overwhelmed. Progressing this skill line lets you reduce the skill's cooldown by 80% by finishing a target with Fletch, allowing you to use it again after just a few seconds. This makes it an excellent finisher in both PvE and PvP. Fletch also has a wide hitbox. You can dash through multiple weakened enemies, killing them and resetting the cooldown. It's versatile and powerful, allowing you to use it repeatedly in quick succession if timed properly. Next is Evade, which is one of the best abilities in this tree. It lets you dodge in any direction with a very short cooldown and doesn't consume stamina. Paired with a light build, you can use dodge, use evade, then dodge again, making you incredibly hard to hit. As you upgrade it, your light attacks reduce the cooldown further, so you can use it even more often. The trick to mastering evade on keyboard and mouse is by remapping your keys. Mapping evade to a button you can easily access makes it much easier to dodge while maintaining movement, but this is not a problem on controller. Progressing this skill line allows you to reduce its cooldown with light attacks and grants you haste if you successfully evade an attack using this skill. The last one is Riposte, which is highly skill-based because it requires you to anticipate enemy attacks. This can be tricky if you're unfamiliar with your opponent's attack patterns, especially in PvP against a smart player. Riposte allows you to enter a defensive stance for 1 second to block an attack and then stun the attacker with a counter. Once upgraded, it also grants a brief window of invulnerability and reduces the cooldowns of your other abilities. It's easier to pull off against early game enemies since they tend to be aggressive, but using it effectively against experienced players takes practice. Newer players might spam attacks, making it easier to counter, while more skilled players will be harder to predict. Learning when to use Riposte is key. Progressing this skill line grants you Empower and reduces your other rapier ability cooldowns when successfully counterattacking. The capstone for this skill tree, Momentum, grants you a 30% increase in damage to your next light or heavy attack after using a rapier ability for 3 seconds. In my opinion, this is good if you don't plan on using Flourish and Finish. Moving on to weapons and armor. Rapiers pair very well with any other dexterity scaling weapon or even an intelligence-based weapon. A popular PvP combo is the Ice Gauntlet and Rapier, which provides AoE and crowd control from the Ice Gauntlet combined with the Rapier's strong mobility. The Rapier excels at quick movement and dodging, but its biggest drawback is its very short range. You need to get too close to deal damage, and if your opponent has good mobility, this can be tough to land hits. Other solid pairings for the Rapier include Musket or Spear. The Spear can help cover the Rapier's range weakness, allowing you to fight at a distance until the enemy closes in. Once they get close, you can switch to the Rapier for close range combat using abilities like Evade to dodge around. You can then swap back to the Spear if the enemy tries to keep their distance again. Alternatively, you could use a ranged weapon to soften up targets before closing in with Flesh for melee combat. While you can pair the Rapier with various weapons, you'll most likely want to stick to Dexterity or Intelligence. As mentioned, the Ice Gauntlet is a great choice in PvP due to the abilities like Entombed, which provides protection, and Ice Storm and AoE attack. The common strategy is to throw down Ice Storm, protect yourself with Entombed. If outnumbered, then pop out and use the Rapier to dash through enemies with Fletch, landing quick hits and finishing them off. This cycle of freezing and dashing works very well in PvP. As for armor, using the Rapier with light armor maximizes your mobility and grants you a 15% damage boost as a bonus, making you nimble and painful at the same time. That wraps up our Rapier weapon and build guide. I hope you guys learned something from this video. Will you be using the Rapier at the launch of New World Aeternum? Let me know in the comments below.